Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. So, this is a very intriguing topic to me. When healings don't happen, what does that mean? Why do they sometimes happen instantly? Why do they sometimes happen slowly? Why do sometimes they take years? Why sometimes an instant? So, someone I know on this path is, currently a little frustrated because they've experienced a number of really powerful healings, and currently they're facing some things that um, seem a little serious, and the healing isn't happening. And so they reached out, and here are some of my thoughts on this topic. So the first thing to keep in mind is a healing can happen in an instant. It can happen like now, and it does. Sometimes healing happens just like that. One moment something is there, and the next moment it's gone. And so just because a healing hasn't happened yet, meaning just because the symptoms are still there, doesn't mean that it's like the mind can be like, oh well, it hasn't happened yet, so it won't happen, or it's going to take a while. But it doesn't work that way. It's not linear at all. So that's the first piece of feedback I would like to offer, is that don't fall in the trap of getting overly mental and seemingly logical about it, right? It seems logical, like, oh, it hasn't happened, it's not going to happen. But actually, that's not logical at all. It's kind of what I would call false logic. It appears logical. It's kind of like seductive logic, right? And so the next piece is to stay open. It can happen in an instant. I've had things just literally just vanish. I've had things where I've asked Bruno Groening for help once, and within a couple weeks, boom, it was gone and it shifted. One healing took almost 3 years. So it's in a sense, it's a deep mystery. Okay, so we're not going to fall into the trap of because it hasn't healed yet, it will never heal. Absolute trap, seductive logic that appears true and is absolutely not true. Okay, the next thing is to come into trust and surrender. So the long and short of it is, we're not in charge. It's a tough lesson to learn on the spiritual path. And it's also a tough lesson to learn once, once there have been a couple really miraculous healings, to remember that we're actually not in charge, that God is in charge. And here comes surrender. Now, surrender doesn't mean not taking positive action. Surrender doesn't mean not going to a doctor, or not going to some type of healing practitioner if you feel guided to. Surrender doesn't mean, I give up, it will never heal. Surrender in this case literally means acknowledging the fact that God's in charge. Now, Bruno Groening said that, let me see if I can find the quote really quick. He basically said that, if something doesn't heal instantly, that there's a reason for it. Okay. This is page 96 from Powers of the Spirit. I must indeed know more, see more, hear more, and feel more than other people, so that I can know who can be helped and who cannot, or may not yet be freed from their pleasant afflicted condition. Okay, Bruno said not yet freed. He didn't say who will be freed and who won't be freed. He said who will not yet. So Bruno Gröning said the good will triumph. That's a very important thing to keep in mind. Now, I don't know that he ever said it quite this way. My own deepest spiritual conviction is that inevitably every soul will be freed. The question is when and how long it'll take. In Bruno Gröning's words, he said the good will triumph. Now, he specifically, that I'm aware of, I don't, what I'm aware of is him speaking to that specifically on this earth, all evil will be removed and paradise will be restored. I don't know if he ever specifically said every soul will be healed or not. That's more of a personal conviction. And but he kind of gives little hints at it, and here's one of them: who will not yet be freed of their present spiritual affliction. So, if the good will triumph, then for me, it's inevitable that sooner or later, every affliction I'm facing, physical, emotional, mental, life, maybe not in this lifetime, in the evolution of my soul's journey, I will be fully freed. And I also believe the same is true for every other soul. So, if we take that to heart, as Bruno said, the good will triumph on this planet, in our individual soul unfoldment. Then whatever we're facing, sooner or later we will be freed of it. It's very important for me to remember that when I'm facing something, because when we're in it, thoughts come like, this is going to last forever. This is horrible. I can't stand this. And kind of underneath that is this sense of imprisonment, and not just in like life sentence, like this is going to be with me forever. Complete. And it, again, more seductive logic. This has been with me for so long, so it's going to be with me forever. Seems logical, actually isn't. There's no logic to that. It's completely false. Everything's temporary. Bruno Gröning said, truth alone endures. And all jokes aside about my current name, Truth, basically what that tells me is that everything that is not in alignment with truth will pass away. Everything. The question is when and how long till that happens. So that's the next piece for me, is really stepping into faith and surrender and trust that while I may not like God's timing, God is in charge. And one of my favorite slogans, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Because we, as little human beings, think we're in charge of life, the universe, and everything. And actually, we're not. There is a higher force at work that's directing everything. Okay, so first we keep an eye out for negative thinking that tells us this is going to last forever. Then we take on faith that sooner or later we will be freed of whatever it is we're facing. The next piece, I'll continue reading. So I know who can be helped and who cannot, or may not yet be freed from their present afflicted condition, because they do not yet have any spiritual ripeness or maturity of their own, or because they must learn something from it. Okay, we're in school. Bruno Gröning was very clear that this is a school. So let's say someone's in an unhealthy relationship, and I go behind the scenes and I kind of manipulate things to get that person out of the relationship. Some way, somehow, I do something. Okay, so I got them out of this unhealthy relationship, but did I really do anything to affect what got them into that relationship? Like maybe they're people pleasing. Maybe they don't know how to say no. Maybe they have a romance addiction. So, okay, good. So I removed the symptom, but I didn't remove the disease. And they're just going to do it again. So the same thing applies on the spiritual path. You know, everything happens for a reason. It's such a cliche, and it's true or it isn't. Either God is in charge or God isn't. So if God is in charge, then things happen for a reason, including afflictions and burdens. That doesn't mean God sends us these afflictions. You know, Bruno gave a beautiful example. There was a woman who she was starting to have trouble. She was starting to go deaf. And Bruno pointed out that in her early family and now with her husband, she just didn't want to listen to what they had to say. And so she made this decision, I'm not going to hear them anymore. I don't remember the exact words. And that over time, this actually cultivated into deafness. So it's not like God was punishing this woman for not wanting to listen and how she approached not wanting to listen. Is just a consequence of her actions. And there are many lessons to be learned there, that our thoughts have power, that instead of, withdrawing and literally like closing off her ears, she just could have spoken up. And so when we're facing a burden or an affliction, if it's showing up as a physical burden, there's something behind it. These things don't just occur for no reason. And I read a beautiful quote recently of Bruno's where he points out, so no one should be, this is Powers of the Spirit, page 70. So no one should be surprised if the body also falls into disorder as a result of the psychological burden they have previously allowed in. And he also talks about how just stress, fear and stress tax the body, shut off the taking in of the healing stream, and then the organs start to fall into disorder. So, of course, when we're facing an issue or an illness, it's hard to step back and look at the bigger picture. And that's actually what's important, because that helps us to stay calm. Because otherwise, we're just like, oh my gosh, this problem, it's not healing. What am I going to do? It's getting worse. And of course, thoughts like that actually just make it worse. So when something doesn't heal immediately, there's a lesson to be learned. Or we haven't, as Bruno said, attained the spiritual maturity or ripeness. The long and short of it is, we need to change. We're all overcoming the force of habit, and the force of negative habits is what brings problems. And so if we're not ready to, to go back to this example of the unhealthy relationships, let's say I'm able to get this person out of that relationship, but if I'm not able to help them change that which created that, then they'll just do it again. They'll just get into another unhealthy relationship. And Bruno Gröning said that he had the power to heal every single person in an entire city with one word. He said, but wouldn't that be, I'm paraphrasing, wouldn't that be tragic? Because then they would actually go ahead and do more evil. Because long and short of it is, and here's another place for us to get humble, if we're experiencing evil in our lives, we've taken on evil. We've done evil either in this life or in a past life. So those are a few pointers for what to do when healings don't occur, is to watch out for negative thinking, which makes it worse, to step into a state of surrender and trust, to take on the higher perspective that this is happening for a reason. This is a gem. Someone who has a lot of experience on this path once said whenever a problem arises, he just visualizes this banner floating down with the word lesson written on it, because he's clear that this is a school and that everything unfun is actually a lesson. And then lastly, not only to take a higher perspective, but to remain calm during the situation, because tension blocks the healing stream. So those are a few pointers. I hope that's helpful. Thanks so much. Have a blessed day. Aloha.